What up? What up? What up? Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of the Backwards K Baseball Podcast. I am Chris Asbrock, and I'm your host today. It's hard to believe we are 18 episodes in, but we have made it. And again, for all 18, I am joined by my esteemed co-host, Scott Kaiser. Scott, my man, how you doing, buddy?
I am well, sir. I am well. Glad to be back after a couple of weeks off. It was a crazy couple of weeks there that we decided to not have a show, and it's good to be back at it.
Well, if people would have seen the train wreck that you and I went through last week, they would have.
Little peek behind the curtain that is the Backwards K baseball show. You know, Chris and I started this show and met each other because our kids play Little League baseball together. And so last week we realized, as we are trying to attempt to launch our own organization and get things off the ground and organized, for lack of a better term, the two of us chuckleheads are in charge and basically running the show. So if you've seen this show, you can only imagine how well that's going. So we decided that we were a little behind, needed some time to catch up, and we spent last week's time during the show working. So it's not as if we just skipped the show or just didn't do it for any old reason. No, we were being old men trying to figure out how to use technology so that we can provide a better baseball playing life for our sons. So
was it fun.
That is actually what we've spent a lot of the last couple of weeks working on. So
yeah,
we love baseball enough that we put up with that stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with us. So
yeah,
there you have
it, man. FTK for the kids, Scott. That's how we do this.
But yeah, there's a lot to get to. I'd say we just go on ahead and rewind back, because the last time we had a show, it was the day before the trade deadline. We broke down quite a bit of the deals that already happened. There was plenty of impact that came out of what happened in those deals. But then obviously trade deadline day was kind of busy. It was so busy, and it's been such a while, I can't exactly remember anything other than the fact that the most notable name after we kind of shut things down on Monday was Jack Flaherty heading to LA. There was plenty of speculation whether or not the Tigers would deal him, but they finally did end up dealing with it. There's the shot that he could have gone to the Yankees, reported deal, but the Yankees didn't like medicals, which the Yankees these days are very extra cautious about dealing for pitching that happens to be hurt. I know last time that they did that with Oakland, it did not turn out too well for them in the trade deadline. So Jack Flaherty goes to LA, a host of other deals. Chris, was there anything after we kind of thought, or is there anything that you'd like to discuss about the trade deadline, movement, impact, and teams that we thought, came out the best from everything that happened that week?
No, in terms of, any of the moves, I mean, obviously it was the big one. It was the Jack Flaherty one. I think that was the deal that, was reported, like you were saying, Scott. The Yankees had it. I mean, the Yankees had Jack Flaherty, but the medicals was just not up to their standard. They didn't like it. They moved on. So the Dodgers, they took care of business. And the price they paid was not much. They did get the Dodgers' number 8 prospect in Theron Lirazano, who's a catcher, or Lorenzo, and then the 22nd prospect, Trey Sweeney, who's an infielder. The price would have been way higher than that. So in terms of everything, the Dodgers, they got their starter, which they needed, because you've got the likes of Yamamoto on, the IL. You've got Walker Buehler out. You have Dustin May out. It's a mash unit right now for the Dodgers. But now they get the player and Jack Flaherty to help. It's another arm for the Dodgers to utilize moving forward. But I think that was the big one. I mean, the other one was the Padres getting Tanner Scott from the Marlins. They also got Brian Hoeing from that, in that same deal for Bobby Snelling, Adam Mazur, Graham Pauley, and Jay Bashirs. So that was a 6-player deal. You knew AJ probably wasn't going to sit on his hands during this trade deadline, and he didn't. And brings in a nice piece. The Padres lost Josh Hader in the offseason, so they replaced him with Tanner Scott. I think it's a great move overall. The Padres are in the term. I mean, they're battling with the Dodgers right now. There's a chance, with the Dodgers, they've been scuffling with all the injuries. The Padres, if they can take a chance and swoop in and make a move there, then do it. And that's what they've been doing. And I think those are the two biggest ones. And ironically, those were the two latest deals that were made on deadline day. So a lot of movement out west. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I like the moves that the Padres made a lot. Just since you brought up the Padres specifically, I would say that the two biggest winners as far as names and just impact on the field and making their team better were probably the Padres and the Mariners. I liked a lot what the Mariners did. They started with the Randy Rosarena deal. They added quite a few other pieces along the way throughout the trading deadline just to kind of bolster things and tighten things up, get their offense more in sync. And last night caught a little bit of Sunday night baseball, the Mariners against the Mets, and the offense was humming last night. Managed to put up double digits on the Mets, won easily. Now things haven't exactly gelled as well as you would expect in Seattle, so it seems like most of their offensive moves don't click right away, but it looks as if they can get that offense kind of healthy and rolling. Jorge Polanco last week was player of the week in the AL, so that's a good sign for him. They had traded for him in the offseason. They had hoped that he would be a big part of this revamped offense, and maybe now that he's fully healthy, that down the stretch again. Victor Robles, who signed a 2-year contract extension, they got off the scrap heap here in the last couple of months. He's had a good showing at the top of that lineup, and they've been doing all of this without Julio Rodriguez, who went down with an injury, and I mean he struggled all damn season, including yesterday in that game. Was first game back off the IL, struck out 5 times in that game, and it just has looked dreadful. That's a big reason why they had to go out and make some more offensive moves, because he struggled so much. He hasn't given them what they expected this season. But if he figures it out even somewhat slightly, or can get back to kind of what he was doing earlier in the season, where he was playing okay, not great, again, not what they were expecting, it may just be a lost season in terms of injuries and underperformance for him. But if he can just give them like a replacement level version of himself for the rest of the way, they should cruise, because as we know, their pitching is rock solid top to bottom in that rotation. They've got a pretty solid bullpen all the way around. And honestly, they're kind of one of those teams that the way things have settled after the trade deadline, I could see making a sneaky run, because the Rangers, continue to struggle. They've dealt, they ended up trading some things off. The injuries have piled up for them, so it looks like they're kind of fading out of it. And while the Astros have made a strong push and come all the way back and battled into that first spot in the West, and I don't think that the Mariners are left for dead like maybe some of their fans had thought, when it looked like, well, here come the Astros, here we go again. They're going to struggle on the stretch. And then on the Padres side, last year it was the ultimate disappointment for that team. They underperformed woefully. They had all the names. Preller went out and made all the moves to get all those all-stars. And you had Soto and Tatis and everything, and it just didn't work out. Like, it just didn't click. That team did not gel. They lost a silly amount of one-run games. They couldn't, for whatever reason, the offense for the names that they had there just did not work. And this year, Tatis has been hurt for the better part of the last month and a half, and the offense has only gotten better. You got Jackson Merrill there as a rookie doing big things. We're going to talk more about him later. But all of these trades AJ Preller made to tighten things up, they are a sneaky good team in the National League. And I would be looking over my shoulder if I was not only the Dodgers in that division, but just the rest of the National League in general, because they've now become one of those teams that I wouldn't want to play, and that's without Tatis. So, you get Tatis back here in the next couple of weeks, and much like, the potential of Julio Rodriguez from the Mariners, just if Tatis is just a decent version of himself, that's a really big boost. And those are two teams that in each league I could see potentially sneaking their way into a World Series conversation if they get hot at the right time. So those are the two teams that I thought were the biggest winners overall. Chris, what about you? Did you have any real big takeaways as far as winners, losers? I do want to talk about the losers, and I'm going to have to bring up the baseball team that I root for.
Yeah, we'll touch on that in a minute. I'll let you stew on that one for a bit. But I'm with you on the two winners, the Mariners and the Padres. I completely agree with you. Everything you said. They're the two GMs, and Dipoto and Preller, that make the most moves, it seems like, throughout every single offseason and trade deadline. The Mariners needed that offense, and what did they do? They got it. So, and now they're sitting right now, as it stands right now, they are tied right now with Houston atop the American League West. So who are you going to take? Are you going to take, or whose pitching staff is going to carry them longer? Give me the Mariners. We've talked about it before. The Mariners have the best pitching staff, hands down, in the American League, if not the entire, game of baseball. That rotation is disgusting. And then all you got to do is add some offense to that. And you've got it, like you were saying, with Julio, who has been just struggling, either injured or just sucking. If he gets it together, oh my goodness. I mean, good luck, because that takes all the pressure off of everybody else if Julio is performing. And then that removes all the pressure off of him, because he doesn't have to carry it, because everybody else, can take part. So I'm a huge fan of what the Mariners offer right now. And I've been a fan of theirs, for a long time. So, for them, it's just a matter of, I think, once everything clicks and they kind of get in that groove, I think they could steamroll a lot of people. And like you said, it could be a sneaky World Series pick of the Padres and the Mariners, and I'm all for that. That would be an incredible, World Series to watch. Two teams that, lower key, count me in, man. I'm all for it. AJ Preller, like I was just saying before this, he's going to make the moves if he sees any weakness in any team above them, he's going to pounce, and that's what he's doing here. All it takes is a couple guys to come back, and then this Padres team can get on a roll. And all it takes is just getting to the playoffs. That's all it takes. And then we saw it with the Diamondbacks last year, and we saw it with the Rangers last year as well. What happened? They both made the World Series. So just get there, and you roll on from there. In terms of, and I think the Dodgers you could count on as another team. One trade we didn't touch on, which I do think could be a sneaky one, was on deadline day as well, when the Guardians got Alex Cobb from the Giants for Jacob Bresnahan and a player to be named later. Cobb, he's recovering from off-season surgery is what happened. So he hasn't debuted. So they make the deal for him. He was an all-star last year for the Giants. Here's your chance now to give him a change of scenery. We know what Alex Cobb can do. He's a solid pitcher. He's proven it in the past. Now, with him in that Guardians rotation and on that team, that right there to me shores up their American League Central Championship, in my opinion. I just think that, as it stands right now, they are 3.5 games up on Minnesota. Minnesota's having a great season. That's, you can't deny that. They're only half game up right now of Kansas City, who is phenomenal as well. Those are the three teams in the, in this race here in the American League Central. But Cleveland's just got the horses, and they've been there, and they can just continue to get it done. And a player like Alex Cobb is a low-key transition that could help push them over the top and win a couple series in the playoffs and move on to potential World Series berth as well. So that's another team I want to throw in as well.
And you mentioned you mentioned the Guardians, and it's funny because shout out to Rex in the comments section asking us if the show we will talk about that too, if we're going to the Bristol game between the Reds and Braves that was announced for Bristol Motor Speedway for next August. We'll get to that in a little bit, but Rex had said just before during our last show, he was asking, was Cleveland going to make a move? Were they going to get some type of pitcher? They did end up making that move for Alex Cobb. Now he debuted over the weekend, struggled as to be suspected or expected because he hadn't pitched in quite a while, coming off the injured list, and hopefully they'll be able to get him on track and back to the Alex Cobb that we've seen before, especially the playoff version of Alex Cobb, which is a slightly elevated version of regular season Alex Cobb. Remember from his days back with the Rays there in Tampa Bay. But the Guardians have struggled a lot recently, and I know you said that they were 3.5 games up, but I was thinking about Rex over the last week because they're 3-7 in their last 10, and even though they've won 2 in a row, they had to win this past weekend series against the Twins to keep them at bay, because I believe as of Friday night the Twins had pulled within a half game of the Guardians in the division, because the Indians had just struggled, and it ironically enough, it came down to their pitching. The bullpen, which had been rock solid all season, kind of started to show some cracks, maybe just show some fatigue because of how much they'd been used. I know that had been a lot of the commentary in some of the circles, was that Cleveland used, their bullpen was great through the first third of the season. But the question was, because they had to use it so much, how great would it be down the stretch? So, it's starting to struggle was kind of to be expected, and hopefully they can weather the storm. But I'm like you. I think that they will. I think that the Cobb trade, I don't think necessarily enhanced their chances exponentially or anything.
No.
It definitely was just a solid pickup to give them another starter, because they had lost, Tristan McKenzie, who,
But those are the moves, though. Sorry to cut you off, but those are the kind of moves that push a team over the top, though. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be the blockbuster deal, but it's those solid moves are the ones that really push these type of teams ahead like that. Because let's be real, Cleveland, we didn't expect them to be as good as they are this year. I didn't. I admit it. Right. Rex, I doubted your boys, man. I'm not going to lie to you. But they can, literally from day one of this season, they have shoved it right up my hoop on that. And it's, props to them. So I think a team like this, I don't have any doubts that, they had a rough series. I know Rex mentioned that. He said we got destroyed this weekend. It was a bad set of a series. And I agree. It wasn't pretty. But you're still 3.5 games up because you're a damn good baseball team. This team this year, they don't seem to be phased like they have in the past. This team's just weird this year, man. They're tough. They're just, they're built different. And I think, like I said, that's where I'm so high on that Alex Cobb deal, because of the fact that it is a solid pitcher who has a proven track record. Yeah, he has been hurt. But again, it's a small move like that, a solid move that I think is going to help propel them moving forward and possibly over the top and capture a World Series trophy.
Well, and we didn't talk about too, because also on trade deadline day was, or it definitely happened after the show, maybe shortly after, was the Lane Thomas trade. Lane Thomas going from DC to Cleveland to add to the top of that lineup, which has been
we touched on that one.
Did we? Okay, because I couldn't remember if that happened or not. But just adding then to that, and I know he struggled. Yeah. It was a great deal, but he has not performed up to the level that they expected so far. But again, early returns, I'm sure that Lane Thomas was pressing and, switching and jumping into the middle of a pennant race, coming from DC and learning new teammates. I'm sure that there's a huge transition there. Fully expect that Lane Thomas will perform how they expected and just lengthen that lineup, which is just one of the more pesky lineups. Not a scary lineup. You really, when you're looking at it, the names don't jump off the page. And outside of Ramirez, there isn't anybody that you're really necessarily game planning around, but they're an annoying team.
They're a pain in the ass. They really are.
Right. From top to bottom, they give you the most pesky at bats you could possibly imagine. And so, again, a team like that can put the ball in play, not strike out, that's what you have to do in the playoffs. And that's why, as long as they get there, as you mentioned, they're going to be an annoying out for somebody, because they could do all the small things. So I still like Cleveland's chances, even though they struggled. And I know that the Twins had surged a little bit, but I don't know that I fully buy this, the Twins. And
I don't.
They've also struggled with keeping their rotation healthy. They lost Joe Ryan this past week to an IL stint. He's got arm troubles going on, so that's a blow to their rotation. So yeah, I think Cleveland should be able to hold off everybody in that division, and assuming health, should be set up pretty well going into the playoffs.
The only team that's going to give them a run, and I like you were saying with Minnesota, I'm not fully on board with them, but the team I have been on board with the whole damn time is Kansas City. I just think. Now, I'm not saying they're going to win the division by any means, but they're going to push
Kansas City made some pretty sneaky good moves too. Again, much like the offseason we talked about, they had a very quiet but solid trade deadline.
Lucas Erceg is going to be a massive low-key deal. That's going to be, I think, the biggest lowest key deal because it wasn't a big – it wasn't a headlining deal because, Lucas Erceg filling in for Mason Miller – out in Oakland. But then, you see that deal and you're like, oh, okay, I like what I see there. So I think that is one that...
to be fair, Kansas City had struggled on the back end too.
And they have. You're correct.
MacArthur has looked shaky all year. Will Smith was their closer to start the season. That went about as to be expected with Will Smith not only sucking, but just getting up there in age and not having it anymore. I don't even know if he's still in that bullpen or what. I haven't heard his name in months, but once he got moved out of the closer's role and then MacArthur took over, he's been shaky. They added Hunter Harvey to that bullpen and Erceg. Again, not huge names. And if you're not deep in the weeds of setup men and bullpen guys, some of these names, you're just like, well, why would we care about that? But much like the San Diego transactions where they locked down the bullpen and made it so that they can have a 5 or 6 inning game in the playoffs and to close out the regular season, it becomes an issue for teams that are playing the Padres or the Royals. You're not up after the 5th inning, then good luck, because now you've got bullets coming out of that bullpen that can shut you down. And that's the formula that the Royals used to win the World Series and to get the World Series in back-to-back years against the Giants there in the mid-early 2000s. So,
and then right after that, they go out and they acquire Paul DeJong. That's a great veteran move right there as well, to bring in a guy like that to help with Salvi Perez, on that roster, who's been there, done that. And Paul DeJong, I want to say, let me pull that one up here with what he was batting. I want to say, he was batting 228 with 18 home runs and an OPS of 706, when they brought him in. But he's a guy that can fill in anywhere in that infield, second, third, hell, you can throw him in a DH. But he's that guy that, can help, mentor these guys down the line in a postseason push, because when it comes down to it, you got to have guys that have been there, done that. And Salvi Perez is one of the best, guys in this entire league. Just a great dude. And he's, now you got another guy in Paul DeJong who's been there, like I said, and done that. Throw him in that mix too. I really do like the moves that Kansas City made. And I think they're really they're putting themselves in a good spot, to push for a wild card. Because again, I think it's Cleveland's division, but, I think Kansas City is going to make some serious noise, towards the end of this season, though.
Well, we talked a lot so far about the teams in the American League Central, and I know we were talking about trade deadline stuff and winners and losers and all that, and I still want to touch on the Braves, but we might as well, while we're talking about the American League Central, discuss one of the other big happenings while both during the trade deadline, and one of those things that obviously at the time we weren't paying much attention to, but then it became a bigger news story, and it ended while we were away. But the Chicago White Sox are having one of the worst seasons of all time in the sport, and that it was embodied by the 20-game losing streak that mercifully ended last week. But Chris,
Dude.
We knew we knew it was going to be bad for the White Sox, and we knew that at the trade deadline they jettisoned even more useful pieces. Michael Kopech was another one that got shipped off to the Dodgers, and there's the 3-team deal and all that movement that they sold anything that wasn't moved nailed down. But that also comes with the fact that you still have to play the games, and a 20-game losing streak amongst all of this, Can we really actually articulate? Because it's hard for me to understand what a 20-game losing streak. I mean, any baseball fan in our lifetimes, nobody's seen losing at this level. It's been one of those things where you look at it and it's like, oh, the longest losing streak since 1900 something. And in this case, it was the Orioles had the most recent losing streak in 1988. But by God, the White Sox almost made history with this losing streak. I there's not much else to be said, but
they are bad. I mean,
yes,
it's incredible. I mean, I feel bad. I feel so bad for their fans. I mean, it's like, what can you do? I mean, you can't even remotely be. You can't even look forward to anything there because you're right now. I just looked, they're 28 and 91. 91 losses already.
Jeez, man. And
Jesus Christ.
And when that losing streak ended, that was the second losing streak that they had of 14 games or more.
Yeah, or more.
Which is, that tied the record for the most in a single season. I mean, they're unwatchable. There's not much there in terms of future prospects and talent. Obviously they've got guys that they hope will turn into something, but for the most part, it's a lot of lower level guys. They added some prospects that they hope, but it's going to be a while before this franchise is winning games and in a position which. Maybe they're better off for it to just tear it down to the studs because the last, I want to say the last 5 years, they've just been kind of stuck in this rut of, well, they've got the talent, but the injuries keep getting in the way. Or they've got the talent on offense, but the pitching isn't quite up to snuff. And, the pitching is kind of okay, but now they can't hit. And so maybe it was just time to hit the entire hard reset, and this was one way of doing that. But for the fans, it's tough because there's no hope, and watching watching this type of baseball because being fans of the Braves and the Reds, the Reds obviously have gone through their struggles, but when the Braves were rebuilding and trying to get back to where they are now, where they're expected to be in contention each year. There was a lot of baseball in there that I struggled to watch. It was really hard to watch. You find reasons to, if they can win this game by a run or if they can keep this game close, that's progress. And, you're just trying to talk yourself into it. And they weren't losing at a historical rate. So I could only imagine what it's like to be a White Sox fan and just tune in or go to a game and know, yeah, there's a 90% chance that this thing is going to go sideways and they've got no shot of winning.
Well, usually, when it's in situations like that, you look for any bit of positivity to where, that you can grab a hold of. Okay, well, we've got, look at we have guys coming through the system, they'll help us out here down the road. Like you said, they don't even have that.
Yeah.
This is a situation to where you're looking at probably many years down the road before they're even remotely anything. You can't spend your way out of this. That's the problem.
Yeah.
If it was a situation, I harken back to the Blue Jays when they went on that run of going out and buying everybody and making those massive trades with the Marlins and bringing in everybody there. And what happened after that? They end up having to tear it down, but they were lucky enough. They had the guys coming through the system. They had the Vladdies. They had the Bows, the Kevin Biggio, who, but you had Teoscar. You had those guys there that could help, you know, your franchise move forward. Like I said, they don't have that now here. Chicago they are set back a long time, and they had better pray that, you know, some of these draft picks hit, you know, and these prospects hit, because if not, oh my gosh, it's gonna be a long, long time before we see anything in the South Side. It sucks, like I said, because as a fan, especially here in Cincinnati, because by God, we know everything about sucking for the longest time, whether it's football or baseball, hell, even soccer with FC Cincinnati for a couple years. I mean, you had to have, like I said, there had to be some little bit of hope to grasp onto. And for Chicago White Sox fans, they don't have that. It sucks so bad. And being a baseball fan, like you said, it is unbearable and unwatchable. And I feel bad for them. I really do.
Matt Barr chiming in saying we should have known the White Sox would be a trash franchise as soon as they named their stadium Guaranteed Rate Field. Yeah, I mean, ironically enough, in general, have you ever been to Comiskey or whatever they're calling it these days? It's, for lack of a better phrase, it is kind of a trash field. It's one of the more, I mean, it's one of the more boring parks. I
haven't heard anything good about it, to be honest with you, but
yeah, it's devoid of life. There's nothing unique about it, and in the comparison I gave to it, unfortunately, because I like the location of the other one that's very similar to is in Anaheim. The Angels Stadium is very similar. Like if you walked through the concourse at either Chicago or Anaheim and you took down just the logos of the team, it could be any Team USA. There's nothing unique about anything like in their, like the facade of the stadium or anything like that. It's not until you're actually out there and you can see, well, obviously, at least the Angels have the rock formation out there in center field. So that's unique, but just the atmosphere and everything like that, it's so just generic. And they're two of my like least favorite ballparks that I've been to, just from the aesthetic standpoint. Like it could have easily been any minor league team or any other franchise could just move in, slap up their logos, and you'd be like, oh, okay, so this is their home field. Like that's what I think about Chicago. So it's fitting that their team is very cookie cutter and bland and quite kind of honestly right now pathetic, because again, they don't have much to look forward to. The team as constructed obviously is barely above a AAA franchise and quality each day. Heck, one of their best players in Garrett Crochet, who we talked about before the trading deadline and whether or not he was going to get moved. Well, he didn't get moved, and I know that you would probably agree with me. It's probably because he opened his mouth.
He's an asshole. Right? He deserves all of it. So I hope he sucks in all of these L's. Because, dude, who the hell are you to come out there and talk like that, man? Like, no, you don't run the show, dude. Like, that's not. And now you're going to be stuck there. And I
don't think I've ever seen it where a baseball player who's 3 years away from being, a free agent and is arbitration eligible for another 3 seasons has told the team and basically the rest of the league, I don't want to be traded, or I won't, go to a different franchise unless they sign me to a long-term deal. This coming from a kid who, has had a decent, successful year this year, but that's the first time in his career he's ever stayed healthy. First time that he's ever, shown the promise that the White Sox had hoped that he had when he got drafted. And, look, he was great up until they started, pulling back on his innings and preserving him for hopefully trading. But, a couple of months of baseball in a career, that a career does not make. So the fact that he was out here, flapping his gums and running his mouth about wanting to sign a new deal and refusing to report to a new team or whatever it may have been, I just thought it was really weird and out of place. Like a 10-year veteran of the game, I would be upset with if they did that, but definitely more or less a rookie, essentially, because that's how I view Crochet. I know he's got 3 years of service time, but for all intents and purposes, he's a rookie. So
he's got no credibility.
Right. Very bizarre way to kind of begin his
Yeah.
career.
And it, to me, I think that, if you're a, a player with that much service time, that age, and everything like that, that sours a lot of teams, you know. And I'm not talking now because obviously it did because teams didn't trade for him. But coming up, if they even remotely want to make a move or even talk to him, that's gonna. I mean, that sets up red flags right there. Like, I mean, what team? Yeah, I know it'd be nice to have his talent, but is it worth the headache? If he's going to be, if he's going to try and run the show, that's not how it is. That's not how it works.
Well, and honestly, I mean, he screws himself and his career because he doesn't get an opportunity to go somewhere else and, potentially
Yes.
be in a playoff race and all of that and further advance his career, at least his profile by playing on a bigger stage. But he really screws, again, the White Sox because here's this asset that they have
Well,
that is now toxic, and you can't trade it at the trade deadline because he opens his mouth and teams are like, well, I'm not going to give up premium pieces or anything to a guy who's saying, give me this deal or else, because hell, they don't even know the guy. And there's been health problems. Like, certainly no team is going to be like, oh, sure, we'll just back up the Brinks to this guy who's had a couple of good months. And then as we head to the offseason, it's like, well, the White Sox can do with it. But again, you're running the same issue. Okay, there's more time to talk it out, and maybe you can kind of figure out more where he's coming from if you know the franchise. But you always hold that ace in your back pocket of, well, the kid said that he wanted this deal, and how do we know he's not going to be a diva in the clubhouse, or how do we know it's not going to alienate other guys in the clubhouse, or how does that look for other guys that we have in a situation where they're 3 years in and we bring this guy in and he said he's already let it be known that he wants an extension, how do we respond to the rest of the players on the team? So you screw over the White Sox even further by diminishing whatever returns it is that they're going to get. Because I imagine that at some point the dust will settle. They will end up trading him because there's no real point in them holding on to him. But no matter what, he screwed them over in the return that they're going to get.
Oh, 1,000%. I'm looking to see who his agent was or who his agent is. I'm trying to see, and I can't find anything on it.
It would only be fitting if it was Boris.
I was just thinking that,
to be honest with you.
Like,
I mean, because the way he acted was straight out of the Boris.
Oh, that is 1,000%
handling your career. So,
yeah, I'm trying to. It just shows like everything is just saying like why his agent's comments don't didn't think it affected his the trade deadline. Well, bullshit, it did, because again, like, no GM is gonna want to deal with that. Like, it's just not. If your agent is chirping now at this point in time based off of a couple of months of success, like, what are you doing? I mean, it's not going to get you anywhere. So I don't know. I don't know what their plan of attack was, if what they thought was gonna be the ultimate outcome. But I can't imagine wanting to stay in Chicago for a team that is on a record pace right now, if that was their ideal finishing maneuver on that. But here we are. But it sucks because, like you said, with the GM Chris Getz in Chicago, his first year doing this, I mean, this poor guy is like, man, he's in hell right now. I mean, it's your prime piece there you can't even get rid of because he's making these unusual demands, and it does not help a team that is very they're set back for a while, and that they can't even get it figured out, and that sucks for them. So, man, rough times now in the South Side. I tell you what.
Well, speaking of rough times and rough couple of weeks, let's move on to one of the biggest trade losers, and that's my Atlanta Braves. Through little fault of their own, I believe, and I categorize them as trade losers because the only trade that they ended up making was with the Giants to reacquire Juan Jorge Soler and Luke Jackson. A great homecoming story. Fans, very, very fond memories of both of them as far as the World Series run in 21 went. But, basically the franchise was kind of hamstrung because the injuries mounted, they continue to mount even still. Alex Anthopoulos had to do what he could to try to bolster things on the fly while things are falling apart around him. There's not a whole lot out there, and the premium pieces that the Braves have as far as trade chips goes are, as I've mentioned, very much a part of this franchise's future moving forward if they're going to have any hope to keep this window open or extend it or whatever. And so what you ran into if you're Alex Anthopoulos is, okay, you've got all these underperforming pieces slash injured guys. What is there that you can really do without mortgaging the future altogether to bring anybody? And the answer was, well, we'll just bring in a couple of complementary pieces, hope that things kind of turn around for the better on the hitting side, and pray for health. Hasn't quite worked out that way in the couple weeks since the trade deadline. If anything, the Braves have played worse. They went into Colorado this weekend. We're lucky to win a game in that series, including blowing a 8-run lead yesterday afternoon. It's just been kind of a nightmare. Like, very, I was talking to a buddy of mine who lives down in Atlanta yesterday, and I said, I know that there were, people give the Braves shit for having only won the one World Series during the big run and lots of disappointment and everything. But the thing about that was, at least they got there. At
Oh,
least,
yes.
and I don't know what the final outcome for this team this season is going to be because they're half game out and entering today for that final wild, or they're half game up, I think, for the final wild card spot. Either way,
Yeah,
rolling all the way down to where it's a lifeline situation, and we're holding on by a thread as far as playoff positioning. I don't know how it's going to end up, but just in general, this has been one of the more frustrating, disappointing seasons because nothing has gone right, and it just doesn't feel like even with all of the names and star power they're still there, like, who would have imagined that a healthy season out of Chris Sale would be completely wasted on a Atlanta Braves team that had the offensive firepower that it did last year? Like, it just has not been there, and it's been tough to watch. But I say all that, and I still have this hope. I still won't let it die. I still have this, like, there's still this little beacon of hope that they can at least get back to being competent. That Michael Harris is going to be activated this week. That kind of helps stabilize things in the outfield. But the time to flip the switch is now. There is only there is only a month and a half left of baseball to be played, and things are getting tighter. It was one thing when the San Diegos of the world are still kind of hanging back, but you've got teams like that surging after the deadline and making that push. The Brewers have played amazingly in the second half, and they've zoomed into the conversation. And like I said, all of a sudden the Braves find themselves in unfamiliar territory over the last couple of years, and it sucks. But it may just end up being a lost season for them overall, which is unfortunate because these windows are open for a very short time.
Yeah.
But they can sometimes unexpectedly close just as quickly. And so while, everybody assumed that the Braves have, at least another couple of years in this window, even if they do, when you waste one of those years, it just really sucks because there's, you can't get it back. Both the year for the career year for the players and just as a fan, that's just one more year. It's just like, well, that was just, a throwaway year and let's go get them next year. So I'm hopeful that things can get turned around before the end of the season, but it doesn't look great. What about your Reds though? Post deadline, what are your thoughts, feelings, concerns moving forward about how they handled things?
Oh man, it's rough because they just don't. There's no consistency from them, and that's the problem. Is right now they're sitting, as it stands right now, 4.5 games back in the wild card. There isn't much time left, and the teams you have to jump are good baseball teams. The way things are going, I feel more confident about the Braves based off of everything you had said, but the Braves they still, as down as they are, they still got a buttload of talent on that team. So, hurt or not, or just I guess not playing up to, potential or, just whatever with the Braves, they still got that talent on that team. So, if you have a chance to pass them, you have to do it. And that's, like you said, windows are, they're not open forever. So you got to take advantage of them. And the Reds have this team that has, they've got a lot of talent on there. They got a lot of young guys. You're set to have Matt McClain come back here, hopefully, sooner rather than later. You've got Ellie De La Cruz doing Ellie De La Cruz things. I do often wonder where this team would be if David Bell was not the manager. Because I say that I don't mind David Bell, but it's seemingly every single night there's stupid shit that happens in the base paths or anything like that I don't understand. And it's, you're down 8-1 or whatever, and you get thrown out at home trying to, stretch more. Like, why? Like, no, like that's just not. It's boneheaded plays that I think, it's stuff that cannot happen is the easiest way to put it. And I just wonder that, like I said, if you have a different voice, at the helm, what it would look like this year. I mean, I'm not saying, there's, that this team would be leading the division right now. I'm not saying that at all. But I can't imagine, it's more or less than a couple game difference there. I'd have to think they're in a better spot. But, again, the injuries have not helped. Now, I did like some of the deals the Reds made. They just, bringing in, Ty France, I think was a great move. Just a nice, veteran presence at first base for him. You do get rid of Frankie Montas, who you got a pretty solid haul on that from the Brewers. You've got guys, and you still kept, solid players in terms like Nick Martinez. You still kept him. They didn't trade anybody, from the system to bring in guys, because I don't think this team, the way they've played, they have underperformed based off of what we saw last year. But with that being said, have they underperformed, or did they way overperform last year? Are some of these guys that we saw last year, are they just not as good as we thought they were last year? So I think it's a combination of both. It sucks because, like I said, when you got a guy like Ellie De La Cruz, who it's time to come to the realization that he's not going to be here long term. It's not going to happen. The guy is going to get paid somewhere else. We know it. It sucks. You got to come to terms with it. You got to grasp onto that aspect of it, because it's what's going to happen. So I do think that, with this Reds ball club, if they continue to, if they can just play consistent ball, they're going to be okay. 4.5 games out right now in the wild card with not much time left is a lot. Can they overcome it? Yes, they can. They've got the pitching staff to do it. You got to have the consistency, like I said, from top to bottom. Offense, when the offense is rolling, defense or the pitching has to take care of it. And the problem is, you go to Milwaukee and you lose a 1-0 game. Like, I want to say that was their third or fourth 1-0 loss this year. They've been shut out multiple times. That stuff cannot happen, with a ball club like this. When you get a pitching performance that is, 1-0, offense has to step up, and they're just not doing it. So there's no consistency from this Reds ball club. And ultimately it's going to be their demise, because I just, what we've seen so far through the, as it stands right now, does not show me that this team can overcome, the 4.5 game deficit in the wild card. When you have to jump the likes of the Braves, the Mets, Cardinals. Now they're doing a great job on the Cardinals right now, who are in town. Giants, Mets, Braves, Diamondbacks, Padres, not happening on some of those teams. So there's a lot of work to be done, but that time is now. Like you said, the switch has to be flipped right now.
Flitch that switch.
I swear I haven't been drinking. I need to. but I haven't.
Well, and to what you're saying, Mike Berlin checking in and saying that he saw a stat about how far below their expected win total today they are, and it makes him want to puke. Not sure what that number would be, but I mean, obviously the Reds, I know we expected them to perform a lot better.
They won the damn division.
Yeah, so we had higher expectations, but I know Mike shares the sentiment that we all kind of did too, that there was this hesitation of, well, did these guys overperform last year in some cases, and was that going to fall back, and what that was going to look like, and it kind of came to fruition. But at the end of the day, I think it's two things. One, I will very much agree with you on the status of one David Bell. I don't have anything against him personally. I don't think he's a horrendous manager. I just don't think he's the manager that's going to get this club where they want to go.
That's the best way to put it. Thank you for you took the words out of my mouth. That's exactly what I needed to say. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's just not the guy here, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's a fine enough manager, but I don't think that they're going to win with him at the helm. And the other part is still, they're still searching for pitching. And this year, they didn't make any huge moves in the offseason. They made the trade for Frankie Montas. They were hoping with Lodolo back and some improvement there. Now, Hunter Green has taken steps, and he has looked very, very good this year. Lodolo, though, can't stay healthy. You struggle there with what's his name? Who's the one that got sent back down? I want to say Asbrock, and I'm like, that's your last name.
Andrew Abbott has been.
Well, Andrew Abbott's been up and down.
He's been up and down.
Who's the other one that they?
Ashcraft.
Ashcraft. Thank you. That's why I want to say Asbrock. But yeah, Ashcraft. Ashcraft hasn't clicked like they hoped, and so it's just that to me. As long as the Reds struggle to find pitching and struggle to lock down that side of things, this is kind of what you're going to get, up and down. The offense is capable of putting up big numbers, but still kind of the pitching is still kind of capable of giving up big numbers. So you end up losing games that you should win. And that's where this underperformance is going to come. So until the Reds are able to figure out a way to get at least halfway competent pitching staff, like this, I think, is kind of what you can expect to see. And I know they've got some guys waiting in the wings, a Brett Lauer and whatnot. So hopefully that is going to be rectified soon. But I don't know if maybe they might have to try to think about trading some of these guys to acquire something a little bit better than a Frankie Montas, who, even if he had pitched as well as you could have hoped for, wasn't necessarily going to be a difference maker. He would have been a very solid 2-3 type guy, but they need more than that.
What's crazy, in terms of that's what I was looking at while you were talking there was, the Reds pitching staff overall they've had a solid year. It doesn't seem like it, but in all reality, that's the stats prove it in this case. And then one stat that does jump out, the Reds are 10th right now in Major League Baseball in ERA.
Huh.
Yeah.
What's that?
I know, 3.88 ERA. Now you got the Mariners and Phillies ahead, obviously. The Brewers, who have had an unbelievable season. Dodgers, Cubs, Guardians. The Braves at 3.78 ERA as well.
Yes, they've wasted that pitching.
Well, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately for them. But, imagine where this team would be if they had any bit of offense. And that's the frustrating part is, like I said, there hasn't been any consistency. Because when the pitching staff shows up, like I said, in a 1-0 loss to the Brewers, you can't get a damn run pushed across the plate. That's the frustrating part of it is this offense has underperformed. And again, we're sitting here looking at it like, the expectations were so high with a guy like Will Benson, who has sucked. Will Benson has been awful. Jake Fraley has been not what we had expected. TJ Friedel can't stay healthy. Matt McClain's been out all damn season. Jonathan India has been a bright spot, I would say. Tyler Stevenson's been a bright spot.
Yeah.
Noelvi Marte has been off the shelf, for 81 games, and he comes back and he's been just meh. So, you got Spencer Steer, who was Spencer Steer. So that it's from top to bottom, you're not getting the performances that we saw last year, which, really gave us the hope coming into this season. Part of the reason why I picked them to win the Central, but, here I am, joke's on me because these guys are maybe they're just not as good as I thought. And I think that's what we're experiencing here. But it's also the frustrating part is when you're having a season like a Spencer Steer or an Ellie De La Cruz, which, Ellie, God love him, he's amazing, but he does stupid stuff though as well. If you can just kind of corral that a little bit and make it just normal baseball, by God, see what happens. But you got to have guys that help supplement the stars on this team. And right now they're not doing that. So can you get away with maybe dealing a piece or two? Because I think the pitching staff is okay. Like I said, when you've got guys like Rhett Lauder coming up and Chase Burns, the next two big names, in your pipeline, and you still have a Chase Petty down there, there's a lot of, there is a lot of positivity, but you don't want to waste what we have right now from these guys with, mixing them in with guys who are just massively underperforming, who are just maybe not very good. So, with the Reds, it's a very frustrating part of, so far of 2024, just because you're just not seeing any remote, amount of consistency at all.
Yeah, well, let's for our sakes, let's hope that our teams can figure it out and at least not embarrass themselves, I guess.
Hey, misery loves company. We're just going to suck on this together, man.
We're just going to suck on this together. Phrasing. I guess we're not doing phrasing anymore.
Nope. That's we should name that. That should be the episode title of this show. We're going to suck on this together. God. It just sucks because it's like, we both, had high expectations for our respective teams, and it's just been kicked right in the teeth right from day one.
Yeah, well, all we can do is hope as fans. That's despite expectations and hope, we don't play the games, and I've beaten my head. I swear I'll be like, well, I'm not going to watch tonight, or I got done. I can't help. I always find myself tuning in and I'm thinking, well, tonight's the start of a turnaround, or they're going to get things going. Right, they're going to get things going in this series, or this series is going to be it. Like they're just going to take off, and I've seen it happen before. And this season, no matter what, even if they've gotten on a little bit of a roll, it ends just as quickly, and it's driving me up a wall. But moving on I want to wrap up the show tonight by talking about three of the brighter players in this game who all happen to share the same first name, which I found a stat today that made me chuckle. The three that I'm talking about are Jackson Holliday, Jackson Chourio, and Jackson Merrill. And there are now more people in Major League Baseball with the first name Jackson than there are with the last name Jackson. So
I'll be damned.
The naming trend, yes, the naming, one of those weird baseball quirks I saw that I'm like, well, I got to bring that up because
that's why baseball's the best.
Baseball, like this. Having Jackson as a first name, it's the first time in MLB history that it has outnumbered the last name Jackson. But these are three of the brightest stars that we have in this game, and we've talked about obviously the first of the three, and Jackson Holliday, number one prospect in all of baseball coming into the season, held on to that title through his struggles earlier this year when he was called up, and now he is back in the major leagues, and my man's tearing the cover off the ball. Like, this is the Jackson Holliday that we all thought that we were going to get when he was drafted, coming into the season, just all of the hype surrounding him. And then you move over to Jackson Chourio, who started this season at 19 years old. Again, another one of these names, top 10 prospect in baseball. It made the Brewers roster out of it. They spent most of this season kind of struggling, just, barely hanging on to a starting spot. Some people wondering if he was in over his head. But the Brewers, to their credit, keep running the kid out there every day. He's made small incremental strides, and since the All-Star break has just been on fire. And then finally we come to Jackson Merrill, who again started the season in the bigs as a 20-year-old, forced into duty for the Padres when in the offseason he was a shortstop prospect and forced his way onto the opening day lineup as an outfielder because the Padres didn't have enough outfielders coming, healthy outfielders or just starting caliber outfielders in Major League Baseball. They gave this kid a chance. He's taken it and run with it. Honestly, there's a real good argument that Jackson Merrill is just for this year the best of the three and should win Rookie of the Year in National League. But man, it's fun to be able to watch these three play, and you know, and obviously in Holiday's case, it's exciting to see him reach his potential. You know, that we had thought that he was going to, because the kid's fun to watch. Like, I mean, he's just a really fun watch. So talk about the Jacksons from your perspective, and then we'll play a little game before we wrap things up about him. But what have you seen so far out of the three Jacksons, and which one if you had to choose just one is your favorite?
Ooh, I'm going to go Jackson Holiday just because that's a, you know, I don't know. There's something about Jackson Holiday that I freaking love. But what was nice about, and again, all three of these guys have been just, phenomenal, which is, again, we say it every episode. The talent in this league is just ridiculous. And as baseball fans, we are so lucky that we're getting to watch these kind of players night in and night out. Jackson Holiday, when he first came up, the hype was there and he struggled. And that's okay. The Orioles handled it perfect. Hey, go down, take a deep breath, get it all fixed, come back. We'll call you right back up and you can roll from there. What has happened? That happened. So everything that, it's played out to absolute perfection for Baltimore and the way they handled that. Because again, anytime a prospect like that gets called up, there is a ton of pressure on them. And, whether, these guys, it's one of those situations to where, can they handle it? Some can, some can't. But it's getting that taste of it the first time and then, having to go back down to the minor leagues and just, sometimes it just removes all that pressure. Okay, I've been up there. I know what it's like. Let's approach it a little different. Not high strung or anything like that. Just go about and play the game the way I know how to play it. And that's what he's done. And he has been just phenomenal. And he's the reason why Baltimore just continues to impress, each and every series. And again, that's why Jackson Holiday is just fun to watch. It's just, I don't know. There's just nostalgia part of it because I love Matt Holiday. So I think that's, and his brother is, coach at Oklahoma State, which is awesome. I love. So I think that's why I'm leaning towards him. But you got, Jackson Chourio was the one move that when Milwaukee brought him up, and then they signed him to that extension to where they got him well under market value. I mean, great on them, but they recognize the talent that he has and what he can offer. And it's going to be scary for teams now for a long time in the Central having to face this kid, each and every season. So, it's just another piece to the puzzle that Milwaukee has. Again, a team that didn't think was going to do much this year, and here they are. And you add in a player like Jackson Chourio to that, into that mix, geez. And it's just, it's awesome. And then Jackson Merrill, when you are the Padres and you get a chance to move out Fernando Tatis and Jackson Merrill to your outfield, like, good Lord. I mean, what an embarrassment of riches that you've got. And it's just unbelievable. And this kid is just, right from the get-go, he's forced the Padres' hand and making him, be a part of this organization right from the get-go. We saw the same situation with Evan Carter and Wyatt Langford in Texas. And now we're seeing it here with Jackson Merrill in San Diego. So good on him. Again, I say it each episode. This talent in this game right now is unbelievable. We are so freaking lucky. So, man, sit back and enjoy the ride and get a chance if you can watch these guys each and every night.
Well, and when Jackson Holiday did end up getting his first major league home run, he did set the record because he was the youngest player in Orioles history to hit a grand slam.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, and then I mean, and since the All-Star break, he's got, or since getting called back up, rather, he's got 4 home runs in his last 6 games, 5 since getting recalled. Like, I mean, he's just been a man on fire. Merrill, he's been sneaky good when it comes to the home runs because he's played solidly enough, and he was just kind of quiet out there in San Diego, but he's turned on the power. And again, while he's less known and heralded as a prospect than the other two, they got all the headlines and the flash. Jackson Merrill's a top 100 prospect himself. Like, there was expectations in San Diego that Jackson Merrill was going to. It just wasn't this soon. Like, Merrill was forced into duty way earlier than he was expected. Probably at least another year, I would suspect that they would have expected him to contend for a spot on next year's roster coming out of spring training. But he blew that away, and he's been the most surprising of the 3 by far.
Yeah.
And then I had seen the highlights, and obviously, I know what Churio had been doing in Milwaukee. And then Milwaukee was in Atlanta last week, and I text you yesterday and said that he gave Atlanta the full dick treatment. Like, it was every time I turned around, Jackson Churio was on base or hitting a home run. They left town. He had a double dong day, the final day that Milwaukee. It was one of those where it's like, man, I'm excited to not see Jackson Churio for a little while. And thank God Jackson Churio doesn't play in the NL East because, again, started off slow this year. And, it's been said that he takes a little time to get going at every level that he's been. Every time the organization has moved him up a level, he struggled. But then once he hits his stride, it's like he takes off. And, there might have been some people thinking that maybe this year wasn't going to be the year. Maybe, it wasn't going to come on. But, man, just before the All-Star break, he hit his stride, and it's been crazy ever since. Like, he's really, really fun to watch. So I enjoy seeing all 3 of the different Jacksons.
I'm just laughing at your text. That just
yes, yeah, it's a full dick.
Yeah, Churio stuck his full dick in us in Atlanta. And I'm just like, I woke up to that and I was like, oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, there was no other way to describe it. Like, every time I turned around, Churio was up. And if there wasn't a runner in scoring position for him to drive in, he became the runner in scoring position to drive in. It was just, he was knocking all over the park, stealing bases. He put on a clinic. The Jackson Churio that I had heard about in the off season and why this 19-year-old kid was going, signed the deal with Milwaukee before he ever played his first game and all that, all that stuff, all those projections. This, it was on full display last week in Atlanta. And I mean, just the rest of the league is going to take notice if they haven't already for what he's going to provide moving forward. And that's the craziest part about the 3 of them, average age of 20.
I know it's so stupid.
It's insane to think that they're all playing at such a high level, and now each of them is in a pennant race. Like, each one of them is not only playing in the bigs and doing an incredible job for their first taste at it. They're right in the middle of playing for, they're playing meaningful baseball. So you can't ask for much more for the fans. You can't ask much more for each of their respective franchises. I'm sure each of their respective franchises is giddy to have them for the next few years of their career before things get crazy. Because in Churio's case, well, I guess in all 3 of their cases, each of the franchise offers a different kind of perspective when it comes to their ability to keep them. In the Orioles case, we don't quite know what it's going to look like because they got new ownership. But under the Angelos,
Angels, they were gone.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
we could expect that, at some point Holiday was probably not going to be an Oriole because he would get too expensive and they would just trade him off and things would, and in the Brewers case, that's kind of just how they have to operate when guys get too expensive. That's why they signed this deal with Churio so that they hopefully can, ward off, his pending surge to superstardom. And then with Jackson Merrill, San Diego tends to bring in and sign big time free agents, but for whatever reason have a hard time signing keeping their own. They'll trade for other teams big name guys, but it's weird they don't necessarily keep their own. So it'll be interesting to see, let's say 5 to 7 years in the future, where these guys are playing. Are they still with these teams? Are they still performing at a high level? I suspect that they will be performing at a high level, but I would say at least one of them has been moved to a different franchise. And that leads me to the final little game of the night. And it kind of already alluded to it, which one, by asking which one you would take out of the three. But if we play keep, bench, trade, how are you going for the three of these players? Which one are you starting and keeping? Which one are you benching? And which one would you trade away? Gun to your head.
I wasn't ready for this game. You didn't tell me about this one.
I'm very well aware. And that's
there's a reason
why. You are on the clock. No pressure.
Cool. Keep benching or start benching trade.
Yeah.
Okay. I will start Jackson Merrill.
Oh, wow. Jackson Merrill. Now that's a little surprising. I wasn't expecting that.
I will bench Holiday.
Okay.
And I'll trade Churio.
Trading Churio.
Because I hate Milwaukee. But that's the problem is, this is the worst part about this stupid ass game is you can't go wrong with any one of them. That's the problem.
And Mike picking up on what I'm putting down, saying starting Jackson, benching Jackson, trading Jackson. Well played, sir.
Yes, Mike, well done, my man. Well done. I would say, I'm going to go.
And you know what? To give Mike a taste of his own medicine, because he'll appreciate this. Respect the game, Mike. Respect the game. You know what you're doing.
I like it. Yeah, I'm going to go Merrill, Holiday, Churio.
Okay.
Because I do think, to touch on your thing with the Padres part of it, they haven't kept their own because they've dealt them. So the majority of the trades that they've been in, those top prospects have gone the other way.
Yeah.
So they haven't had a chance to keep their own. And I just think I say that because in this case, with Jackson Merrill out in the outfield with Fernando Tatis, and on that team with, Machado and Bogarts and Hassan Kim, Cronenworth, you name it, they're loaded. So I think you can't go wrong because you can say the same damn thing about Jackson Holiday.
No, I know that's why this is a very tough question to answer. Like I think whoever you trade away, you'll look back and regret.
You're wrong on. You're wrong on every single one of them. Yeah,
is the wrong answer.
There's legit no right answer on this question at all. To me, in my opinion, there's no right answer.
And that's what makes it fun too.
Exactly.
No matter what, the two that you keep, even the one on the bench, we're looking at potentially, superstar level players, all three across the board, each and every year, perennial all-stars at worst. And so I don't think there's a real wrong answer, but I was just curious what you think. And a little bit shocking that you picked Jackson Merrill, but I like it. I will say what's yours. Yeah, I will say that I'm going to start Churio.
Okay, I figured that's where you were going to go. You just got wailed by him for an entire series.
Seeing that, I'm going to bench Holiday. And I'm going to trade Jackson Merrill, and that that's no knock on Jackson Merrill. I like him a lot.
It is.
He was a shortstop to start the year and has made the transition pretty much seamlessly to the outfield. is super impressive. Probably the hardest job of the three. I know the two have had the pressure of coming in and having the contract if you're Churier or having the pedigree if you're Holiday, but switching from shortstop to center field on the fly, having never played, and then on day one of your big league debut, you're playing a position that you've never played at the professional level. I think that's crazy impressive.
Oh, yeah.
But I just give the slight edge to the other two, and God, man, Churio's, he's something else, man. If he plays like, if he's out there hitting 20 to 30 home runs and stealing 30 plus bases a year, I mean, good luck with that in Milwaukee. That's what I say. The beauty of all three of these players, none of them play in the National League East, my friend.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have to worry about and I say that for now because any of these three because of what we've already.
They'll go to Philadelphia and then
I was going to say, or the Mets will buy them or something. I don't have to worry about them ending up in DC or Miami, but Philadelphia and New York, I do have to concern myself that they could end up there someday. So
I wouldn't be too concerned about the Mets.
Well, I will say this as far
at least now
the Mets in general. If Cohen has learned from his mistakes and when at the end of this year, they got a bunch of contracts coming off the books, doesn't look like they're going to be a real big into signing because I feel like it would have already happened. Pete Alonso. So I think he walks. They're going to have a ton of money to spend. And I am worried that this time around, they're going to spend it a little bit wiser. And then basically they're just going to overnight become a real giant pain. Because this season, they weren't supposed to be anything. And it was supposed to be another disaster. But you see where they, addition by subtraction in a couple cases and some of those guys who underperformed last year, and they're right there in the thick of it. Now, they should be better just based off how much money they have tied up in the payroll. You're just looking at it on paper. But when some of those albatross contracts come off the books this offseason, I'm very worried that they're going to make savvy decisions in this offseason, and then all of a sudden they're right back as a thorn in my side when you're talking about the NL East. And it's not just Philadelphia that I have to worry about. It'll be the Mets too. So hopefully it doesn't mean that they're going to get any of these Jacksons anytime soon. I would just as soon see each one of these respective Jacksons stay with the franchises they are for the long time. And I mean, just as a baseball fan in general,
it benefits the game.
I really do enjoy when kids come up and stay, with the franchise that drafted them or developed them, whatever it may be, and they stay there for the duration of their career. Maybe not their entire career. Maybe they they finish out the back end or what, but the bulk of their career, I love to see high level players stick with their. So I'm rooting to see the best from all of these players for their respective franchises. Is the best way.
Completely agree. Yep, I'm with you.
Well, outside of that, my man, I think that kind of catches us up on the last couple of weeks. Like I said, we've got a month and a half left of this thing. Still a lot of baseball left to be played, a lot of races to be decided. Not much has changed in the overall scheme of things. I would suspect that we're going to be looking at many of the same suspects that we discussed at the beginning of the year. But that's pretty much all I got for this week, man. Yeah. Do you have anything else?
I got nothing.
Rex asking me if I was taking a shot at LeBron and the franchise thing leaving. No, I absolutely not. I take no shot. I personally wish that LeBron had stayed in Cleveland his entire career and played there. I think that would have been better than franchise hopping and moving around and doing all the weirdness. Whatever, to each his own, and that's how he wanted his career to play out. And I'm sure he doesn't have any regrets. And hell, who. Given the choice, sorry, Rex, but I don't think most of us would want to spend our entire career in Cleveland, even one born and raised nearby in Akron. So, there is that. But that decidedly was not a shot at LeBron. So there is that. So. Well, I think that is going to do it for us this week. This has been one. Things. I appreciate you you doing this with me, Chris. We've, like I said, got another month and a half left to go, my man.
It's been fun as hell, man. Let's keep rolling.
Let's do it. Thank you guys for joining us here on the Backwards K Baseball Show. We certainly appreciate it. You guys can find us wherever you find all other podcast listening needs. We're also on Facebook, on Twitter, on the Impact Sports Cincinnati Network, as well as always, the Craft Brew Sports Podcasting Network. And you can find us on YouTube, anywhere else. We love doing this show. We appreciate you guys. Sorry we have to take some time off away to do, kids stuff. But we'll try to keep that few and far between. We should be able to keep this thing rolling. And we hope you guys can join us. Thank you guys again for joining us for this episode. We look forward to next week. Good night, everybody.